With that in mind, go to the Visor Center, make an appointment. But also this Friday, what do you have the opportunity to do? No, not by your TA. Not by your TA, by your peers. So, I pity the person that doesn't bring something to the lab for their classmates to help them improve. Do you understand? Bring something. So you got to have something ready. I mean, if I was you, I would definitely have something ready so that my classmates could tell me how bad it is. And then I would be very appreciative. Do you guys understand that? This Friday, bring something in. It's my recommendation. It's not required because, again, you decide what grades you want to make in this class. But if you want to get a C or better on this assignment, I would bring in any kind of draft Friday to my labs because you'll have time for your peers to give you feedback. Is that cool? All right. The second thing that we need to talk about is when we use AP, do we say the bombing, if it's breaking news, does the bombing occur today or does it occur this morning? We went, because we don't know. I mean, if anything, the AP exercise that you guys had to do was very difficult, wasn't it? But I don't know. So what did I do in my office when these guys asked me? Guess what I did? I went online and did a Google search on breaking news, Associated Press. And from the Associated Press wire service, there were 2 stories that happened today. You know what they used? The word Wednesday. On Wednesday in Libya, a bomb went off. Not this morning, not this afternoon, but on Wednesday. So what would I do on a breaking news? I would just denote the day that it is, okay? And if it's 10 days out one way or 10 days out the other way, we're going to learn that we're going to use different phrasing. But if the school shooting occurred today, in our story on breaking news, we're going to say Wednesday, and our readers are going to know. They're going to go, that's today. Do you understand? That's a question that you guys had, and I so respect the question that you have, because if you had it, then other people had it. Are we clear about that? We don't use this morning, we don't use today, we use the day of the week that it is. That's what Associated Press suggests we do, okay? There was one other clerical thing that morality on ethics on releasing the names of victims in a school shooting. Okay, now first of all, I want to say this is very important, okay? What is one of the other questions that's the 6 things you leave this class with? Anybody, raise your hand. Yes. Okay, no, that's not one of the 6 things that we leave. No, I say, what would your boss say? Okay, I had a person email me one time, and they've been working for 5 years, and they emailed me and said, I'm so glad that you asked me. You told me to ask my boss what the standard is at my workplace. Okay? So on the question of, do you recently names to somebody shot? First thing is you always want to know, what do? Ask your boss. But also, Nick has a very good point. I would not release any names until I knew the next of kin was notified. Okay? That would be a criteria. You don't want them to have to read that they lost a family member in the newspaper. You want to know that the police officials or the university has gone through the process and broken the news to them and given them the opportunity for counseling. You know what I'm saying? Okay, you get it, right? So we want to know the next of kin. Another thing is, are they a minor? And depending on the state, that may mean under 18 or under 21. Okay, so we're in a gray area. It's got to do with ethics, right? It's a gray area. One thing I will say is never. Look, the bottom line is, a Jewish guy said, Buddha once said, if you want to be treated a certain way, treat other people that way. If your brother or sister died, would you want a reporter sticking a camera in your mom's face and saying, your son just died, how do you feel? Would you want that? No. So don't do that to anybody, ever. But this whole deal is an ethics issue. And when it comes to ethics, to thine own self be true. Okay? We advance to ethics, and it'll be a big discussion. But really, I can tell you, don't do if they're under 18 or 21. Don't do until the next of kin is announced. But look, don't quote me to your boss. Ask your boss, what do we do here? at this newspaper or at this TV station. Does that make sense? Does that make, you guys got it? Ask your boss, what's standard? That's the best answer to this question, all right? Yes, ma'am. If you know they've been notified by the police and or the university, and you know that they're over 21, then you can release the names. All right? How's that? Okay, cool. Does that answer your question? So I guess I would err on the side of doing unto other people the way I would want be done. Does that make sense? I don't want to read in the newspaper that my child was shot in a school shooting. I want somebody to come and talk to me about it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Yeah, it does. I mean, I hope it does. All right, is that cool? We got those out of the way? All right, great. So now, here we are, straight on Chapter 5, which is the writer's toolbox. As a writer, yes? Chapter 4, thank you. Chapter 4, the writer's toolbox. And you know, I'm really borrowing from Stephen King. You guys know Stephen King, right? Oh, he just wrote a sequel to The Shining. Danny isn't here, Mrs. Dorrance. Anyways, The Shining, The Stand. I think The Stand will be remembered in 100 years as great literature, personally. I think it's a great story and it's great literature. But Shawshank Redemption, right? He wrote that. He said that he remembers when he was a little kid and his uncle had this tools and a toolkit. And in each drawer he had like screwdrivers and he had wrenches and it was all very well laid out, okay? So we're going to talk about what it is in your toolbox that you have at your disposal. And go ahead, really we're going to talk about three things. The basic tools you have. Now, Writer's Toolbox, Chapter 4, as she said, we're going to talk about vocabulary, grammar, and punctuation, okay? Now, before I get into those three areas, which is your first drawer is your vocabulary, second is grammar, third is punctuation, I want to introduce us to two gentlemen who we're going to know more about after we talk on Monday, which is, go to the next slide, which is Strunk and White. You can barely see that red on black isn't good, but Strunk and White, The Elements of Style. And this is a small book that's about how to use grammar well, how to use effective style that's clear, concise, correct, and complete. You think I make that stuff up? E.B. White wrote Charlotte's Web a long time ago, but he was also an English teacher. And he suggested that every word must tell. And that really is a way to say be concise, right? And so we're going to know about these guys and we're going to study them more when we turn to the next chapter, which is about style. But I like what Stephen King says about this book. And if I were to have a quiz, number one would be, what does Stephen King say about the elements of style? Yes. Doesn't have any bullshit in it. That's very good. I like that. It is very concise, clear, and complete. And we're going to borrow from those ideas as concepts about quality writing, right? Being clear, concise, correct, and complete. And that's what E.B. White and Strunk say are so important in elements of style. So let's break that down to its most basic level. And we go, first of all, to vocabulary. Now, before I start, I want to say, even Mr. King says you can't take a cruddy writer and make them a great writer. We're all endowed with certain talents, and we have to explore what talents we have. Look, I can't teach you grammar. You needed to learn that in the 3rd grade. You either know how this language works or you don't. And if you don't, then you probably need to go over and change your major to math. I mean, all I'm doing is regurgitating, for the most part, what Miss Baker taught you in the 3rd grade. You know? We diagram sentences, and Stephen King says, really, we either know how the language works or we don't. And actually, most of us already know how it works, whether we diagram sentences or not. So, look, there's a lot of stuff in the text. A lot of it's a review of your 3rd, 5th grade grammar books. And I'm not going to go into detail because I'm going to assume that you experienced the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Okay? I'll assume that. Is that true for anybody? All right. And even if you're homeschooled, your mom and your dad or whoever taught you, your grandmother or aunt or whoever taught you about grammar. Okay? But with that being said, let's do a little bit of review. The first area we're going to talk about is vocabulary, okay? And let's go ahead and continue. So we're talking about vocabulary. We have some rules, okay? And remember, hey guys, look at me for 1 second. Just write down one idea, and then let's talk about it. So the first idea you write down is what? Use simple words, okay? Use simple words. When in doubt, use the simple word. Now look, there are different kinds of writing for different kinds of situations. When Mr. Downey and I are writing about communication and its meta-discipline and about how all epistemological endeavors, the search for what constitutes knowledge or not, is functionally a communicative enterprise that should employ and doesn't employ the communicative logic, we're writing for a particular audience. But you don't want to use that audience when you're trying to get people to go to Bubba's Car Wash. Do you understand? So, what I'm saying, and it's just like the other day when we talked about Ben Affleck, there was some superfluous stuff, in my opinion, about Ben Affleck. But when we're writing for mass media, we don't have time to be superfluous. Even the word superfluous, I wouldn't use that word. What word is better than superfluous? Unnecessary? How about that? Is that, raise your hand, who sent me that email? Yeah. What's a better word than superfluous? Unnecessary? It's not concise. It wasn't concise. That's what your email said, isn't it? There's a much better way to say it than superfluous. Okay? Because look, Homer Simpson, he's just drank 10 beers, Duff beers, man. He's just wanting to know what day the tractor pull is. He doesn't know he doesn't even know where a dictionary is. So if you use the word superfluous, you just confuse Joe 12-pack. And we have to reach Joe 12-pack because we need to stumble back to the convenience store and buy another 12-pack of Keystone Light, right? Okay, well, so thus, let's use simple words, the power of little words. Little words can be powerful. And little words, use little words, okay? Okay, I'm listening. Did you write that down? Use little words. I need your attention for a second. I'm listening to BBC. I love BBC, all right? British Broadcasting Corporation. Now, Fox would call it communist, far to the left. It's more left than anything we have in America, but the rest of the world considers it middle of the road. But anyways, one day I'm listening to BBC, British Broadcasting Company, and they say, the British soldiery continue to evacuate from, it was one of Basar. It was a city in Iraq. The British soldiery? What is a soldiery? That was kind of confusing to me. What is a soldiery? Anybody? Yes, sir. Wow, what a way better word, man. Right? I would use the word troops. And maybe for a British and they're drinking their tea, the soldiery is better. But for you and me, let's use the word troops. It's a better word. It gets the point across. It's the first word that comes to mind when I think about a group of United States service people, right? How about like domicile versus home? Just use home, man. First order, simple words. Use domicile in your poetry class, but don't use it when you're writing for mass media. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Very good. Unfortunately, and look, I'm not saying that everybody's at a fifth level, but Joe's got a good point, is that we want to write at a fifth grade level. Most newspapers are written between a fifth grade level and an eighth grade level. And it's not that I can't comprehend bigger words, but when I'm reading the facts about the tractor pull, just give me the facts and make it easy for me to understand it. And so writing at a fifth grade level, you don't want to condescend to your audience, you just want to make it clear. I mean, oh man, this is an alarm. Michaela's rude today, I'm so sorry. I guess I should be lecturing. That's what the alarm tells me. Little words can be effective, okay? And so little words can be successful to impart our message. Home is more effective than domicile, okay? Does that make sense? When you write for mass media, do what Joe says and just try to shoot for the fifth grade level. Because after Joe 12-pack has drank his 12-pack, he doesn't want to look up words while he's watching Monday Night Football. Avoid fancy words, okay? Write that down. Avoid fancy words. The comedian, he's kind of a right-wing comedian. What's his name? No, he's not right-wing, dude. He used to be on Saturday Night Live. Yeah, no, come on. What? No. Adam Sandler never did the nightly news. God, what's this guy's name? Dennis Miller. Dennis Miller used to do Monday Night Football, okay? Yeah, he was like a commentator on Monday Night Football. And at one point, he's like doing color, and he's like, the Sisyphean task faced by the Green Bay is insurmountable. You know, he's got the, doesn't he have like a mullet or whatever, but the Sisyphean task faced by Green Bay is virtually surmountable. Like, do you think Joe 12-pack Sisyphean? Do you know the story of Sisyphus? Does anybody? Yeah, somebody does, yes. What is it? Punished by the gods. So yeah, he was in the bottom of a hole, but very good. He had to push this boulder up to the top of this hole for eternity, and then what would always happen when he got to the top? It would roll back down. Do you think Joe 12-pack knows what Sisyphean? I mean, let alone Sisyphus, who that is. But now Dennis Miller is making it into an adjective, right? No, isn't an adjective because task is a noun. So Sisyphean task. Look, he lasted 2 seasons, and they were like, "Dude, we're sorry, but Joe 12-pack is confused when you're doing color." Do you understand what I'm saying? He was inappropriate for mass media when he's talking about the Sisyphean task faced by the Green Bay was insurmountable. He should have used, Madden. What's Madden's first name? John? Green Bay. The guy's been employed for decades. Is he still alive? I mean, I'm buying the next Madden football, which has 2 differences from the last one. I'm paying $58 for it. You guys with me on that? But the point is, he's very simple on the voiceover out of our video game. We're playing it on Wii. Boy, they really need to pull it together, you know? I mean, Madden is he uses simple words, and he had a long career in football announcing. You got it? First order words. The first word that comes to your mind. When you think of somebody's house, what's the first word that comes to your mind? House, great. Is it domicile? Is it dwelling? Is it cottage? No, what is it? House. Use that first word, okay? Because that's what's going to be most clear to us. Because what is the most important thing when we write for mass media? Clarity. Simple words are the most clear, okay? Definitive language. House. It's definitive. It's descriptive. It's simple. Use definitive language because, once again, the most important thing when writing for mass media is to be clear. And when you guys came in, at least you mass media students, didn't you take like an entrance exam? Assessment? Do you remember that? You had a 1-hour class. Did anybody have a 1-hour class when they became majors? Really? Well, this is one of the things I want you to leave with. As Mikhail says, being clear is the most important thing when writing for mass media. You got that, don't you, Taylor? You know that, all right. And also avoid jargon. I had a great student who was a tennis player. She graduated from the University of Texas Law School, which is awesome. It was a law school that George W. Bush couldn't get into, despite being leader of the free world. You know, he was always misunderestimated, I think. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know. But the point is that she was a tennis player, and she turned in an assignment, and look, Joe knows way more about football or baseball than I do, okay? But what you probably need to do, Joe, is try to think about me as a reader. Rather than being over-technical, okay? Think about your general readership. Because she turned an assignment, it was really good, but I don't know anything about tennis. And the article assumed I knew all this stuff about tennis. Like it used all these, I mean, again, 15 love, 30 love. I guess I know some of that from playing a little in high school, you know, just like down at the park. But don't assume I know. And now, if you're writing for a tennis magazine, that's one thing, and you can be specialized in your jargon. Another word is nomenclature. Nomenclature is the language that's appropriate to a particular field of endeavor or study. Don't use it when you're writing a Joe 12-pack, okay? So, you know, even Joe, you know, as we talk about, I'd love for you to send me an email and tell me what was awry in the statistics on that baseball story. But in general, don't be too technical, because I want to know what you're talking about. Does that make sense? So you got to be sensitive to that fact. There may have been things in that baseball example where the Cubs, yeah, right, win the World Series. Dream on. I won the lottery today. But the point is that you might want to avoid more technical stuff. You know what I mean? Because I don't know about baseball. Very good, Joe. You get my point. And now you give us the indicative example, and you're writing for the Pantagraph, and your editor is like, you can't use all this jargon because Dr. McHale doesn't know crud about the nomenclature, the jargon of baseball. Do you guys get this? All right. So try to think about a general readership. Also, this is very important. I can't forget this. For these first two assignments, a person said something. On Wednesday, this was one of the stories. On Wednesday, the president said Russia has to be responsible if there are being sarin gas attacks to let the world know. Okay? Now, anybody read The Onion? Yeah. Well, this week The Onion was like, Putin of Russia says that sarin gas was not used despite Assad trying to persuade him that they had used sarin gas. Because Putin, it's politics. Anybody, it's funny to you? Okay, all right. What? Okay, the point is, the word is said. The verb is said. Write down said in print. They said it. Now, somebody sent me an email, and I love the email. It said, do you put the person said before the quote? I would say you do that if you're changing from one speaker that you quoted to a different speaker that you quoted. Put Mikhail said, comma, open quotation marks, the Onion is funny, period, close quotation marks. That's very important you get that punctuation correct. Okay, yes. It's Ada, right? Ida, I'm sorry, Ida. Okay, very good question. First, wait a second, okay? First of all, stated, never. A person never states something. A document states something. Do you understand? A person never states something. A person says something. A document states something. Okay? Everybody understand this is very important. If you put stated, we're going to take points off. All right? Added could be used. I would go with said usually. But if you're got a ton of quotes from one person, you can say added. But remember that probably this first assignment is like page to a page and a half long, and you probably want to quote more than one person. If you go on a long period with one speaker, you might want to put added. But we want to know that we said. The person said it. Okay? In the AP story today about the quote from the president about Syria and Russia, he said it. Said in print. Does everybody understand? Stated. And added, if you're quoting a really long time for something, you might use added, but just use said. Okay? The important thing is, I know that you know in print, they always in past tense said it. Do you understand? Does everybody understand? Raise your hand if you understand. It's very important. Good. All right. Oh, wait, go back. Stephen King said, man, using fancy words when you don't need to is like dressing up a cat, like in a tuxedo. It's embarrassing for the cat, and it should be embarrassing to the writer. All right? So, Stephen King, words of wisdom. Don't dress your cat up in a tuxedo, all right? And that also means don't talk about the soldiery's domiciles, all right? You can do that in some other class, but not when we're writing for mass media, okay? All right, great. Go ahead. Important word choice. Sometimes the close word is not close enough. So, word choice, and the first thing we could put is homonyms. What are homonyms? Yes, Taylor. There, and there. They're words that sound alike, but they're spelled different and have different meaning. Now, there's an example in the books. Now, I need you to write it down. Don't keep writing, please. Please. You write in the homonyms, and then you write, and these are words that sound the same, but are spelled differently and mean different things, right? Cool? One time I was on the radio, I just played this show, and there were a bunch of belly dancers, and they were interviewing me on the radio, and I said, these belly, aural, A-U-R-A-L, means of or relating to the ear, okay? So, you know, there are these belly dancers, which really, I don't know, in the Middle East, it seems like, but pole dancing, I mean, if you're, anyways, okay, belly dancing, it's an art, okay? So on the radio I said, these belly dancers are orally and visually stimulating. Oh, no! And my ex, the baby's mama, was like, what did you say? Did you say they were orally stimulated? I said, no, orally, of or related to the ear. And she said, well, that's not what it sounded like on the radio. Do you guys get my point? Close was not close enough. I should have used a different word. Their music and the costumes are very stimulating. You know what I mean? Does this make sense? You guys understand? I need to make sure that it is the correct word and not a word that's close. There was a grad student who needed me to write a letter of recommendation. And actually, we could talk about how spell check drops the ball sometimes. I wanted to write that she was conscientious. Okay? But when I typed and then spell check and kind of in a rush, I gave it to Patty Franz to look at it for me. And rather than the word conscientious, the word that was there was contentious. Well, that's not what I want to impart if I'm writing a letter of recommendation for somebody, right? The close word is not close enough, and that's what we need to be important. Now, the next thing, omit needless, let's see, dictionary versus thesaurus. Dictionaries are good. I have dictionaries all over the place. I love to look up the Greek roots or the Latin roots of words, right? But don't use a thesaurus when writing for mass media to find different, more complex words for the same idea, okay? The only time I use a thesaurus is when I'm doing a crossword puzzle, which is cheating, I think. Is it? I don't know. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's an awesome question. Do you use a thesaurus if you're finding yourself using the same word over and over? Maybe when you're writing for English, but when you're writing for mass media, use the same word over and over and over. Okay? I could talk about budgetary problems, or I could talk about financial problems, or I could talk about fiduciary problems. What we need to do when we write for mass media is use similar phrasing. Yes, sir. No, we are not. We're worried about clarity. Okay? Clarity. The score was. It was a win. It's more important to be clear than to have. I would try to stick to the similar constructs, similar words, okay? And particularly, maybe victory or win, those, we could probably go with that, but stick to closer words. Being repetitive, think about the tension between being repetitive and being clear. And I would say stick to similar phrasing. And I'm not just saying that, I'm saying Strunk and White suggests that is more clear. So don't use the thesaurus. When in doubt, stick with win. Or stick with financial, okay? And there is a place for being variety and using different words, but when it's right in an inverted pyramid that might be cut off after the 4th or 5th paragraph, use similar phrasing, all right? All right. Orthodox spelling. How do you spell through? Ida. Yeah, okay, colloquialisms, I guess, but let's talk about this for a second. How do you spell through? T-H-R-O-U-G-H. Is that correct? Not T-H-R-U. That is not how you spell it. This is funny. Woody was looking at my oven, which was made in America a long time ago, and above the burner, it has a light, and they spelled light, L-I-T-E. And he was like, Dad, that's not how you spell light. I mean, what was that about? How do you spell light? Yeah, man, I would take 8 points off for the person who put light on the top of my range, okay? Use orthodox spelling, yes. Okay, I'm going to say use orthodox spelling. Through-H is more orthodox. Use that, okay? Use what's traditionally orthodox spelling. Colloquialisms. She's missing it on the test. What is a colloquialism? What's a colloquialism? Yes. Yeah, a phrase used by people in a certain region. Okay, so if you've watched any of, what is the Duck movie, or the Duck show? Duck Dynasty, they may use colloquialisms, local words for things. Try not to use that localized slang, okay? Avoid that when you can. If you're going to use it because you want to capture the essence of some idea, then put it in quotation marks and do a direct quote, okay? Proper names. Make sure you spell proper names correctly. I can't emphasize this enough. You have minus 16 points if you get it wrong, okay? So, does that make sense? One time downstairs, there was a guy named Matt Hale, who was a white supremacist in Chicago, and he inspired somebody to go by the Evanston Northwestern campus and shoot people. For some reason, somebody down there put Matt McHale. I don't know why, but Matt McHale is my brother's name, and he lives in Glen Ellen, and he's not a white supremacist that motivated people to go shoot people. Do you understand? Somebody was like, this guy's name is your name. And I'm like, no, they misspelled it. They because they had my class, they thought it was Mikhail, and they got too fast. And do you want somebody who's spelling your name wrong? No. So, 16 points off. Always double check proper names. Spell check. Yeah, I love how I spelled it in the book. What page is that on? Yeah, spell check on page 58. Spell check doesn't catch everything. It didn't catch me using the word contentious rather than conscientious, did it? Right? So be careful. I depend on my spell check. I'm very grateful for my spell check, but I can't totally rely on my spell check because it's not going to catch homonyms. It's not going to catch similar words like contentious or conscientious. It's not going to catch compound words. It may get that wrong. And proper names. It's not going to catch the ball on proper names, particularly ones that are off the beaten path. Okay? Use your spell check. Don't rely too much on it. Got it? All right. So now we've talked about your basic blocks or words. Use simple words, words we know. There are some things. Every sentence has got, we're usually going to assume we got a noun and a verb. All right? The dog ran. Period. That's a sentence. Okay? What we want to try to do is use simple sentences. And I'm going to say avoid complex or compound sentences. Here's my bottom line is, what is an independent clause? Can somebody define an independent clause for me? Yes. It's a sentence that can stand on its own. Don't join independent clauses with punctuation or conjunction. Just treat them with the dignity of being an independent clause and end the sentence. All right? When in doubt, use simple sentences. Try to avoid complex sentences or compound sentences. All right? And that may not be true for our academic writing. I mean, Derek and I can have a sentence that's like 18 lines long, but that's for an academic audience. It's not for me trying to tell you what time the PTA meeting is at your kid's school next Tuesday. When it comes to that, just try to use simple sentences, all right? We always want to have agreement with pronoun and verb tense. Man, nothing shows ignorance like, we was going to the store. You know, if it's we, it's were, right? You want your verb tense to agree with the number of the noun. I was going to the store. We were going to the store. You know something's awry when they said, well, we was going to the store. We saw a UFO. You know what I mean? Like, So always have agreement in your pronoun or your noun and your verb tense. Use active voice. This is very important. What is active voice? This is on every test you're going to take in this class. Active voice. Nick. Okay, it can be, but even a past tense could be active voice. Yes, ma'am. The noun at the front is the subject, and it acts on a direct or indirect object. So the subject acts on the object. That is active voice. Write it down. Subject acts on object. That's the answer. Put a star by it. This will be on the midterm. This will be on the final. Subject acts on the object. Okay, are you going to support this for a second, or are we going to talk about exceptions? All right, what's the question? Sammy Sosa hit the ball. Okay, there are exceptions, but I don't want to talk about them. Right now, we're going to go ahead and say Sammy Sosa hit the ball, because the ball is far less important than Sammy. Now, Sammy's been disgraced, has he not? But he's more important than the ball, so let's put Sammy's name first, okay? 99% of the time, we're going to use active voice, which is what? Subject acts on the object. What is active voice? Yeah, the subject acts on the object. What is active voice? Acts on the object. Here's the tell in my writing. If a noun is acted upon by, the word by is the tell in my writing. I'm on page 369 of Communicating for Change. And the editor, working at Roman Littlefield, says there's something squirrely about the sentence. And the sentence was, computer communication is used by advocates to enlarge their audience. And she said, I don't know what this is, but it's fishy. What was wrong with the sentence? It was passive. It was not active. Computer technology is used by activists to enlarge their audience. That is passive. What I want is active. Advocates use computer technology to expand their audiences. Do you understand the difference? What is the tell word that I'm being passive for me? By. All right? Has somebody got a question about this? I mean, it was a concept that took me a while. I didn't understand as a sophomore in college why she kept writing passive voice. But really, it is about being direct. Okay? The subject acts on an object. Do we got that? Really? It's going to be on the test. You want number 42 correct on the midterm? Just nod. Okay, yeah, thank you. How about you? Yeah. You. What is active voice? Yeah, thank you. How about you? Do you get it? Okay, great. Awesome. Now, that being said, there are some exceptions, okay? What? There are some exceptions. One is if the direct object is more important than the subject. Michael Jackson was arrested by police. You get my point? That if the direct object is actually more important than the subject, it's an exception to the rule. Another exception to the rule might be variety. But in general, 99% of the time, what do you use? Active voice as opposed to passive voice. And active voice is what? Subject acts on an object. Not an object was acted upon by a subject. Are we cool? All right. Use active voice. Try to avoid complex and compound sentence unless they're absolutely essential. Okay? Did I answer your question, Joe? Okay. Somebody else had a comment or question. I didn't want to. Yes, sir. Okay, cool. And there might be time where the ball hit Sammy Sosa and knocked his tooth out, where Sammy Sosa might come before because he's more important than the ball. You get me? But in general, use active voice, okay? Good. All right. That's some grammar. We talk some more about grammar. Fear is the root of all bad writing. Usually passive voice comes because I'm timid. I don't want to give responsibility to who did it. The old ladies were victimized. What's the subject? No, they were victimized. They're the object. Who did the victimizing? We don't know. You see, that's timid. Just say, the housing authority victimized the old ladies, man. You know? So, oftentimes active is more bold, it gives responsibility, and Stephen King suggests that the root of all bad writing is fear. But quality writing, we know, is determined by what? Clear, correct, concise, and complete. And Stephen King is going to reinforce that for us, and does. He says that's the problem with most writing. It's not clear, correct, concise, and complete. It's got what does Strunk and White not have? Come on, what does Strunk and White not have? Bullshit. You got bullshit, you're not being concise. Now the last thing we want to talk about is punctuation. Oh, I live to talk about punctuation. Exciting in my life. Go ahead. Commas in a list. Oh man, I could talk for a half hour about this. On a short list, Associated Press says, look, you guys need to pay attention to me right now. On a short list of things, Associated Press says, do not put a comma in front of the conjunction. Write it down. Associated Press says, on a short list, do not put a comma before the conjunction. Is that clear? Yes. I don't know, between 3 and 7. How about that? Because on a long list, actually, I might start using semicolons, although Kurt Vonnegut calls semicolons the hermaphrodite of the English language, so I would say try to avoid semicolons and avoid colons when you can, to tell you the truth. But the point is, do not use a comma before a conjunction in a short list. That's Associated Press. I'm going to stop there, all right? Parenthetical expressions. Please do not start sentences with parenthetical expressions. Put them at the end of sentences. Don't pack your stuff up. I know you got a doctor's appointment in 2 minutes, but if you would, write down, don't start a sentence with a parenthetical expression. All right? Do not join 2 independent clauses with a conjunction. Just treat them like independent sentences. Okay? You guys got that? Do not join independent clauses with the conjunction. Generally, just treat them as independent sentences. You can use a comma before a conjunction and introducing an independent clause, but don't treat independent clauses as what? Sentences, okay? Don't join. No, I got 30 seconds. I'm looking at it. All right? So if we go on and we talk more for 20 seconds, please, sir, would you go on? Thank you. Don't break your sentences in 2, all right? It's time. 2 things we learned today. Revise, rewrite, repeat, right? The second thing is, when in doubt, who do you ask? You look at your AP book, and then if you've got a question about your workplace, what do? Ask your boss. Hey, I expect you to read the rest of this chapter, and then we'll go and start talking about chapter 5 on Monday. Have a good week.